Don't look now, but big tech's rush to create AI infrastructure is pricing the rest of us out of the marketplace. Let's talk about that. So welcome to Dave is Not AI. I'm Dave, an AI SME, an AI skeptic, looking at AI with a balanced perspective. Let's get started. So this is a video I've been wanting to make for a while and just kind of calling out something that seems to be going on in the marketplace. It's affecting, my clients and my friends, and, people are coming to me and complaining to me about, some of the prices in the marketplace and how they're getting, in many cases pushed out of the market, and to take a look at it. And so that's what this video does. So the AI gold rush, basically the big tech providers out there, the cloud computing providers, OpenAI, anybody who's in the AI space right now that's trying to build out their infrastructure is exploding in terms of the demand that they're putting on the marketplace and buying some of the chips that they're going to need to build out that infrastructure. And so the gold rush that's what people are calling it, is triggering microinflation of core components, GPUs, DRAM, SSDs, quietly taxing every small IT shop, gamer, and hobbyist trying to buy basic compute systems out of the market. And people are getting impacted by this. And it's being impacted around before we've seen any kind of value that's coming back from the AI space. In other words, the AI players are building out the infrastructure that they feel they're going to need. And so that's building data centers and, buying memory and buying GPUs and CPU-based systems and, everything it's going to take to build up, massive amounts of server farms to really kind of handle this capacity that hasn't shown up yet. But in doing so, they're putting pressure in the market, causing shortages and causing the rest of us, rank and file folks who are not in the big tech, not big tech companies with access to billions of dollars, to pay more for that stuff. And it's hurting the folks. So what are some of the deals that are changing the marketplace? Well, Micron Technology, which is a leading global manufacturer of RAM chips, has secured significant long-term supply agreements with large AI and cloud computing companies. And in other words, they're, selling, as much as 50% of the stock or the production runs to some of these larger companies over the next few years. And of course, that's going to create a shortage in terms of the ability to sell RAM to rank and file individuals, people who are just, building a PC, building a business, or, a smaller data center player, things like that. And they're having to pay the additional pricing because of the shortages around these large Uber deals that are occurring right now. Several leading technology giants such as Microsoft, Google, and Amazon Web Services have invested billions of dollars over multiple years in new data center construction and expansion to support AI development. So the data center construction basically is leading the demand for the servers. And so many of these larger organizations understand that they're going to have to procure what they need now because they view shortages into the future. And they're trying to be the first one that goes to a chip manufacturer to buy much of their production. And so that's raising prices for everybody else who's trying to buy in the same market. And finally, NVIDIA, a key driver for AI advancements, has entered a multi-year high-value agreement with memory manufacturers like SK Hynix and Samsung. And we're seeing many of these deals in the press right now. And in case they're not really doing anything as far as building and using the infrastructure, they're just securing components that they feel they're going to need before they need them. And so many of these organizations, these high-tech organizations, are flush with cash because their stock prices are flying high. And that's how they're cornering the market on these particular components. Now, what isn't being considered is other people have to buy in the same market. So demand for memory chips rising. Artificial intelligence is driving a surge in memory chip demand, especially for RAM, random access memory, resulting in the shortage. So all of this stuff has an impact on the marketplace. For example, we saw the price of eggs last year in 2024, which zoomed up, and that's because the Asian flu and shortages in the market that caused the prices to kind of artificially surge for a small period of time. And we're seeing the same thing here in the component space. Now, this isn't going to last forever. I'm not saying that this is going to raise the price of chips for everybody else, infinitum, but this is going to, cause short-term price hikes that are going to last several months, perhaps many months, perhaps a couple of years. It could be, where the folks who are the standard consumers of this technology are paying 3 to 4 times what they paid for the same component just a few years ago. And of course, the impact on devices. Since more chips are being allocated for AI-related usage, such as cloud computing and data centers, fewer are available for consumer electronics like smartphones, computers, game consoles, and TVs. Believe it or not, smart TVs are computers that are causing device prices to rise. We've always been used to device prices going down over time. Anything that's going to be manufactured in mass production, certainly technology, is eventually going to fall in price because they get more efficient at it. They're able to, produce an item at lower cost to the manufacturer, and therefore they're able to sell it to us or pass that savings on to us. Well, that's no longer the case if they're paying 3 to 4 times for a chip that goes into a TV or a chip that goes into your automobile that you're buying. And in many cases, as we saw a few years ago, these manufacturers are going to be hindered not by their production technology, but their ability to get access to the technology they need to put in these devices. And they're going to have to pay the price or the going price for that technology, and they're going to pass that along to you. And so in many cases, we could see devices that we're used to being reduced in price over time going significantly higher. So as I mentioned earlier, this is causing sharp price increases. So manufacturers are paying significantly more for RAM chips, 50% more this quarter over the last, with some paying up to 2 to 3 times more for urgent needs. DRAM prices are expected to rise another 40% over the next quarter. And these price hikes are going to go on for some time, as long as the demand's out there and the production capacity is what it is. You got to remember, people are building these chips. They can't magically expand their production capacity. They can only produce a certain amount of chips over a certain amount of time, and they're going to sell to the highest bidder, whoever is going to pay whatever the going price is, and that's what's occurring in the market, and that's creating the shortage, which is creating the price hikes. So what we're doing is effectively creating a 2-tier hardware market. Hyperscalers who buy entire foundry runs, and the rank and file buyers who are left with the scraps and paying the premium price. So there's the haves and the have-nots, so to speak. And of course, the have-nots may be multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar companies that are, basically just consumers of IT products and devices and computers, and they're paying a much more higher price for the technology as the AI players are, playing the gold rush and trying to rush out there and buy as much infrastructure as they can and build as many data centers as they can. And that's going to cause, some inflation in that particular space. And the concerning thing now is we've always relied on this technology to commoditize and always relied to the production costs to go down and the price of these items to go down. That's not the case anymore. So when hyperscalers sign multi-billion-dollar contracts for GPUs and memory, they don't just consume supply. They reset the global price floor for everyone else, down the chain. And of course, this is old news. We've done this in every kind of you look at economics and supply and demand and things like that. Less supply, as long as demand is constant, and it's always going to be constant for this kind of technology, the prices are going to go up. And there's going to be some gouging. In fact, if you look at on eBay now, you see people trying to sell inline memory modules that were, $150 last year, and they're trying to unload them for $700 this year. Now that's unrealistic, and they're not going to get it. But a few people who have a demand, they can't find supply, which in many cases you go out to these, websites that are selling this technology. They just don't have the supply that they had a year ago, and people are willing to pay the higher prices if there's some urgent need for them. So the person trying to build a small machine learning lab or upgrade a workstation is now competing directly with trillion-dollar companies that are hoarding silicon at an unprecedented scale. And the thing that bothers me most about this is they're not hoarding the silicon to be put in immediate production. In many cases, the use of those chips may be 2 or 3 years away. They're just hoarding the capacity because they want to ensure that they're going to have that component on hand when the need occurs. And also they probably foresee what they are actually causing, prices to go up. And so many of these larger AI players, OpenAI is one of them, they'll create several deals with several different, component suppliers, and none of the component suppliers will know about the other deals. And so by doing so, they have an impact in the market that really kind of none of the production or the suppliers understand is there. So in other words, they didn't anticipate the demand was 3 times. They thought it was just the 1 time based on the deal that they're working on. And perfectly legal, nothing wrong with that. Ethically, I think I may have some issues with it, and I think other people in the marketplace may have some issues with it. So I call this microinflation, basically inflation that's around a very narrow, set of components or technology. And it's going to show up as an extra 10 to 20% on RAM kits or CPUs, but multiply that across an IT refresh, and it becomes a serious hidden cost for smaller organizations. Organizations have to use computers. They have to buy laptops. They have to buy cell phones. They have to buy processors for their small data centers. They're not at the scale of an Amazon Web Services or a Microsoft or an OpenAI, and they're the ones who are going to get hurt by this. They have to go out and compete in the marketplace and buy their chips and components around the surging demand that the AI players are causing, and that's where the impact's going to occur. And you got to remember, someone's going to pay the bill, and so higher prices on their IT infrastructure because of the higher prices in the components, that goes down to whatever they're doing, whether they're making cars or, blenders or whatever, it's going to make the cost of goods sold that much higher. And that's going to be passed down to the consumer. So we celebrate AI breakthroughs, but we rarely talk about how the underlying infrastructure arms race is quietly eroding hardware affordability for everyone else, with affordability being a big buzzword right now. We're looking at why things cost more and why food costs more and housing costs more and automobiles cost more, things like that. Well, it's things like this where there seems to be no rhyme and reason in terms of why there's demand on something that's not needed now. You got to remember they're buying ahead of the demand. The infrastructure that they're betting on is infrastructure that they feel they're going to need to capture a market that's going to show up in a year or two. What if that market never shows up? The money's going to be wasted. They're going to be hurt as a company. But the consumers, the people who are buying in the space, are the ones who are going to be hurt initially. And so, in essence, you're paying the price for somebody else's strategic decision and someone else's strategic decision to do risk. And so the private equity guys and all those folks are in there now buying up the capacity without real rhyme or reason or understanding how that's going to affect the marketplace. And by the way, it's not only chips, but power, water, things like that, things that data centers use a lot of. And so if you're building that kind of infrastructure, power consumption is going to go way up. AI is a huge consumer of power, as we talked about here in the show. And that's going to cause the price of electricity to go up for the rank and file, people who live, in the same service areas as the data centers, which I do, living in Northern Virginia. That price is going to be passed on to you. And I think there can be some regulations to control how much they can raise the price. But at the end of the day, they're not going to take a loss on producing power. And if there's more demand from the AI data centers, then they're going to charge more. That's just the way it goes. So we're externalizing the cost of AI progress to the rank and file user who now pays much more for the same memory storage and CPUs they bought a few years ago. Go on the internet and do a search on, price of memory 2 years ago and price of memory now, or price of GPUs 2 years ago and the price of GPUs now, or CPUs now even. There's a significant price hike and that's occurred. And that's a jarring thing. Like I said, where it's 2 to 3 times what it was just a few years ago. And I understand why they're charging the additional money because they have only a limited number of supply because the demand from the big high-tech players has just exploded. But you kind of have to ask yourself, is it right to do that? Is this something that's a good move for, the technology sector in general? You want everybody to grow and everybody to grow in a fair way. And if you're, pricing them out of the market, that's not a good thing. You're going to want those people there. Guess who's going to consume the AI? It's not going to be the AI players. It's going to be the rank and file companies out there, the many small businesses out there who are going to leverage this technology as a strategic differentiator. And if they end up being hurt by this and not necessarily able to make the investment in AI, that's going to come down on the AI players. Well, anyway, let me know what you think down in the comments. If this is something that I'm hallucinating, or is this something that's really affecting individuals out there? I'm getting emails from you guys and DMs from you guys that talk about this as a huge pain point in the industry right now, and you're feeling the pain in terms of the higher prices, and you're limiting your ability to grow your business because of the prices that you're paying for the technology you need to grow your business. Is it fair? Well, life isn't fair, but is this something that we should be doing without a thought? No, that's why I'm creating this video. Anyway, don't forget to like and subscribe and check out my other videos on this channel. Also check out my InfoWorld Cloud Computing blog, my 100 plus LinkedIn learning courses, and of course my generative AI architecture course out on Go Cloud Careers. And finally, my latest books, Unlocking the Power of Cloud and An Insider's Guide to Cloud Computing. So until next week, stay very, very safe. The magical YouTube algorithm thinks this is another one of my videos that you should watch next. Take care.